Right. Welcome to another episode of Is Success Simple? We've got another guest to talk about his journey, what success means to him. So I want to welcome Andrew Horton to the podcast. So Andrew is the co-founder of Threat Canary. So Andrew, yeah, welcome to the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Hi, Charlie. Thank you for inviting me on your new podcast. I'm happy to share my story and hopefully inspire some people to start companies of their own. Because if you do have an idea, then you should believe in yourself and you should bring your
Mm.
ideas into reality so that you can share them with everybody else.
Awesome. I love that. And I guess we can go back into that, but tell everybody what is Threat Canary, because I understand this in the cybersecurity space. So I'm quite fascinated to hear how you explain exactly what you guys do.
Sure. Threat Canary is a cyber AI platform designed to stop data breaches. And specifically stop data breaches through APIs. API security is how Optus got hacked, how their data got breached and affected, a lot of Australians. And
Mm.
they are not alone, as APIs are the gateway between your data and your
Yeah.
databases and your apps, whether they're on the web or mobile. They're also your gateway to your data breaches. And they were an area a few years ago that was underserved by the enterprise vendors available for large organizations. Threat Canary is
Hmm.
specifically designed for enterprise customers who have more APIs than they can count.
Mm. As that, because obviously with the evolution of AI and API now is more of a common term used, because obviously for anyone that is wanting to implement AI into their business, an API source code is the easiest way to do it. So has it evolved in terms of what you've seen from a data breach point of view?
Okay, so I'm going to talk to those points. Over the last 30 years, we've seen a change in the architectural patterns of how our applications are developed for the enterprise. And some people are going to be familiar with the rise of virtual machines, then containerization. With containerization, we've also had microservices proliferate, specifically since about 2020. All the big four banks and large organizations, including government, telco, insurance, they've all been creating more and more microservices as they start to adopt these new patterns of development. With these microservices, right, come APIs. There's older
Okay.
APIs like XML and SOAP, and there's newer APIs like REST, which uses JSON structured data. And then most recently, we've seen the rise of GraphQL, which is a far more efficient way for a front end, that's your application, to query data and get structured data back with, less overhead. So we've got this technological evolution that's resulted in a huge proliferation of APIs. And if you go to any of the big banks right now and you say, hey, how many APIs have you got? Their CTO isn't going to know. And those
Right.
people, if they can't answer that question, those are our customers
Why?
because they've got the problems of scale. And that's what Threat Canary solves.
Got you. So in terms of a bank that you're referring to, would that be the same issue? Would they still have the same issue when it comes to scale,
Yeah.
in terms of what you're referring to?
Yes. I'm specifically referring to the kinds of scale that we have with the big four banks here in Australia, right? Like, we talked to some guys at Macquarie and NAB and they have these problems. A few years ago, I was consulting into Service New South Wales, and they provide hundreds of government functions through thousands of APIs to about 8 million citizens. And they were worried that they could be susceptible to a data breach. They needed an expert to come in and assess it, and they found me. I joined and wanted to work with my friend Matt Flannery. So, I went in, helped them out for a period of time. And in doing so, I evaluated a lot of the products available on the market. That included things like Salt Security, No Name Security. And I tested some of them with proofs of concepts and trials. And what I found was that they were really lacking. Now, No Name Security, I was particularly inspired by the feature set they had and the promises they gave. And they had a really nice user interface and user experience, which enabled them to grow quickly. But once I actually tested it and I realized under the hood what it could do, combined with a market valuation at the time of over $1 billion US, I thought, well, I can build something better. So at the end of the contracts, Matt and I, we decided that we would try to build something because lots of people have lots of ideas, right? Like you've probably got heaps of great ideas for businesses. But how many ideas have you had that are $1 billion ideas? Probably not many, right? Same here.
Yeah.
Same. So started designing and planning how to do this. And in doing so, eventually No Name got sold to Akamai for an exit of 400 million USD, which is, a little bit less than their inflated valuation from before, but it's still a healthy chunk of change. And along the way, there are a lot of lessons. You're never the same person you are at the start of a journey by the time you finish. It doesn't matter what you.
Of course. It's the famous hero's journey, isn't it?
Exactly. That's right.
Well, and could you talk more in detail around what sort of you've experienced going through that journey? Because we'll talk later about it because there's also another side project that's evolved as well, which I'd love to explore. But yeah, tell us about your journey so far and some of the things that you've noticed from maybe a mindset point of view.
Sure. So I've been developing open source security software tools for hackers and for defenders, primarily in a language called Ruby. Now, Ruby is syntactically superior to Python, but I realized that I had to learn and get up to speed in Python because Python had been winning the data science wars. So Ruby was incredibly successful and important around the 2010 era, right? When Ruby on Rails was a platform used to build a lot of the leading SaaS companies in the world. I'm pretty sure Airbnb was built on Ruby. I don't really plan to talk about this. I got to think about it. All right. So technically the language is better. It's nicer to use. Okay. But I had to swap and go and learn Python, which, wasn't really a big deal because it's the same generation of language. It's kind of similar. I also had to learn some other things. Like most recently, I've been learning how to use graph databases. Now, previously, I was using SQL databases and NoSQL databases. On the SQL side, we've got things like Postgres, which is a high performance open source database. And I still use it for lots of things. And but it's really good when you've got structured data that you want to put in tables, and then those are relational tables. They're connected to each other off particular fields. And then we've got NoSQL databases, and we've got things like Mongo. We've got Elastic, which is more of a logging sort of a system than a database, but some people use it that way. And that's better when you've got unstructured data. And with Threat Canary, I realized I was actually dealing with a lot of unstructured data. So of course, I've got a technology stack that's Python first, leveraging things like Django, which gives you a lot of things immediately out of the box in terms of authentication, object relational models, and the ability to have a back end with a UI really quickly. That's really nice with
Hmm.
Django. Then with things like Mongo, that's where I can start throwing this unstructured data. You just started throwing it into these different indexes to be available to process and then work with. And then, so I already knew those technologies. What I didn't know was knowledge graph databases, or sorry, graph databases that I can use to build a knowledge graph. Now, some of you might be familiar with things like Neo4j or Kuzu or
Hmm.
Duck database. These are all, Neo4j is the most famous and well-known. Kuzu and DuckDB are more recent, so I had to start learning this. So we're still on the technical side of things I have to learn. Because when you're building a startup, you have to put on every hat. In addition, oh my God, what else? Most recently, I had to learn product manager skills. What's a product manager, you ask? Well, a product manager is somebody who communicates features and goals of an application, right, to technical teams. And they can lead them,
Yeah.
they can define it. Um, and that's something that a lot of technical people, or even people who have built large apps, including enterprise ones, they don't really know how to do that well. So I had to learn that. Um, at the
Can you,
front end,
can I just
go
jump in
on.
there, Andrew?
Mm.
Why do you find, I guess, why was that a challenge, and why do you find that most people that are very technical struggle at being able to deliver that message?
Yeah. Okay. Going into tech, a lot of young people these days, they see the front end and the back end developer division. They bifurcate their skills. They think, okay, I'm a back end developer. I've got to learn my Linux and my coding. Front end developer, I'll learn things like React and Vite and UX design. If you go back a little bit in time, because I'm 45 now, so I'm old, right? I had to learn all of this all at once. That's what we all did. So people of my generation, we know our operating systems, our network stack, we know front end design as well. And I
Yeah.
just happen to have done some UI UX. But across this front end, back end developer skill set, I've also added a few other things to it. I'd already learned UI UX design, and most recently, I'd also added um, graph databases and the product manager skills. But it's a constant process of learning. If you want to start a company and build something where you're going up against other companies that have hundreds of developers and people working together, you have to be able to put on every hat and wear it. So
Hmm.
that's a little bit of what I've learned. What else have I learned? I've learned something about perseverance. I've learned something about not giving up when things are not moving easily. I've learned about talking to venture capitalists, what they look for, what the VC scene is like, and
Yeah.
the difficulties that an Australian startup has compared to, let's say, a US-based startup. Beyond that, I've also learned about family offices, angel investment. Um, but
And all of
I'm
that
really getting far into
within.
this interview, answering a couple of questions that I want to answer with some depth. And I haven't told you enough about myself, my background, or my co-founder,
Please do.
Matt Flannery, because Threat Canary is not just me. Threat Canary, I founded it with Matt Flannery, who is currently leading a red team capability for a government agency, which is kind of ironic because the first time he hit the headlines in Australia is because he was raided by the AFP for hacking. Anyway,
Really?
so he pivoted from that to career in consulting through Deloitte and went on to a variety of different roles before he ended up landing here in Threat Canary. He is a very capable operator.
Mm. Yeah, because I saw that and then there's Sean Rowlands as well.
Sean, soon after we started, Matt and I went and talked to Sean, and because Sean had a background with business development. He he'd been a repeat serial entrepreneur. And Sean was someone that we thought, okay, we'll go to Sean, we'll talk about our ideas, and he can help guide us through some of this business stuff that we don't understand. Because
Hmm.
he'd been in and around companies on the ASX, he'd been investing in cyber companies like Vulcan, he'd been part of the Aqua security story as well. So Sean has this wealth of experience in some areas that are complementary to what Matt and I had. And along the way, there's a lot of people to mention who have helped us as well. There's Harry, who's been doing front-end design. There's John Welander, who's been doing UI UX. And I think I better stop there, because otherwise I'm going to be thinking, well, there's all these different people who've helped a little bit here and there, and they're all really great people, okay? But if I start trying to list them, I'm going to leave somebody out, and it's not going to be cool, okay? Um,
I know that feeling.
yeah, so look, Threat Canary, right? In building this, I've also learned a lot about AI, and I was learning about cyber and AI anyway. So, um, a while back, I ended up starting to write this AI security course, which was about hacking with large language models. And it was pitched, at beginner hackers, right? So, people who are doing it professionally, but, it's not really cutting edge advanced AI stuff compared to, what some people out there doing.
Mm.
And started building out this curriculum, explaining how to do things like, okay, I built a chatbot with the help of, I think it was Dr. Michael Colo. It was his idea originally to build a chatbot that pretends to have one agenda, but in fact it has another. And I made this idea real by creating like a dating app chatbot where you think you're having a chat like it's on Tinder, but they're really trying to get information out of you. And the information is specifically the list of security questions that used to get used for password resets. Okay, like your
Hmm.
mother's maiden name, where did you go to
Yeah.
school? What was your first car? And this was actually pretty easy to build using um, the OpenAI API. So if you've used
Yep.
ChatGPT, right, then you can go to the OpenAI website, you can get into the OpenAI playground, and you can start experimenting with
Hmm.
how to send different system prompts, user prompts, changing the temperature, changing the model. Now, the temperature
Yeah.
is how crazy it is, or how random the answer is. If you want really, really creative answers, you dial the temperature up. When you want something that's a bit more concrete and reliable and dependable, then you bring it all the way down, right? So let's say you're refactoring source code. You want like a low temperature about like zero point 0.2 or zero point 0.3. If you're doing, I don't know, pros, you probably want like 0.7.
Right.
Okay,
Okay.
so that's one area of AI. I was looking at things like de-obfuscation, because large language models, right? They shocked everybody initially when people found out that they can translate between any set of languages without specifically being trained to
Yes.
do so. Well, we know that that's for human languages, but it also works for computer languages. So you can translate,
Yeah.
a Python program into C or vice versa. And it kind of sort of works sometimes depending on how big the program is and the context window of what you're working with. Well, taking that approach and then applying it to de-obfuscation, which is an important skill for reverse engineering, um, for malware.
What the,
And also,
what does that mean?
okay, so
What's the opposite of this?
here's what you do, right? Let's say you've got some JavaScript that's some malicious payload, and it's gonna, I don't know, send you to a phishing page. We'll just say that. If you put it straight in the source code, then people can read it and they know exactly what it means. So how do you stop that?
Yes.
You can the malware author inserting this JavaScript into the web page, or maybe it's doing something else. Maybe it's a keylogger to steal your credit card numbers as you enter it into the checkout form. And to make it harder to read, it goes through a process called obfuscation, where the strings, right, in the program can be encoded or encrypted. So it's quite common to see things like PowerShell scripts that have base64 encoding in them, and then they get decoded and it's encoded again, and then it's going to be decoded again, and then it's still encoded, and they'll put it through some process like an XOR function or just something to kind of unravel it, to make it a pain for any analysts. Now, this is not just for the bad guys. Obfuscation has legitimate commercial purposes as well, like protecting encryption or license key algorithms.
How would it do that if
Okay.
it's, how would you reverse engineer it to be able to do the opposite?
Well, it turns out, right, that a large language model does really well to convert not just between computer languages, but between an obfuscated representation of a computer program and the original JavaScript that it was from. And
Right.
that was actually really surprising. So that's another area of, I think it's still unpublished. Like, I don't think anyone's really tackled that yet. I have to go have a look. But um, that's sort of some of the things I started playing around with AI and large language models. More recently, I've been looking at other stuff that's getting a little bit more advanced again. And if people do want to kind of learn about AI, not just from a cyber perspective, check out Kaggle. The Kaggle website has a whole lot of data sets and challenges. So that's really an awesome resource for people who want to start combining AI and data science and, build out their skills that way.
But that's interesting. Like, so on that, like, so you've started Threat Canary from the experience that you with the $1 billion value company that sold for 400 million. You thought, right, we can build something that's going to be better. Initially, was it always to build something with AI, or did that come along the journey?
No, we started specifically targeting API security because that's where the data is, that's where the data breaches are. And
Okay, the AI part of that.
there was a few algorithms that used AI initially. And over time, the way to apply AI to this problem space has grown. Like
Why do you think that
the
is?
initial inspiration was a little bit of AI here and there. And then as the process has developed, I've found more ways to apply AI in novel ways that
Okay,
haven't really been used before. For example, trying to build like a cognitive inference layer to reduce hallucinations. And
that's gone over my head. So
okay.
what does that mean?
So with a large language model, let's say you're generating an essay for your university course, right? Well, you can't trust that all the references are going to be correct. And when it just makes up a reference, that's called a hallucination. That's the technical term that's used.
Okay, got you.
Yes. So I think anybody who's, been chatting to Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini knows that large language models will just make stuff up. How do you
Yeah.
solve that? Well, there's a whole lot of different ways of solving that. Okay. One I just mentioned before is you change the temperature that's being used. Other ways is you have to find some way of validating the answer,
Mm,
or you find something else that's one step away from uh, uh, an abstraction. So you find some medium point that you solve for first, and then from that point, then you solve for the next point, and you cross this bridge with certainty because you've split it into smaller tasks.
I see. And like I'm finding this conversation very fascinating because I think a lot of businesses, small, medium, large, don't think too much about cybersecurity nowhere near as they should. And I think with the evolution of AI, as what you're referring to and how you're talking about it, it seems like probably now more than ever, businesses should be more worried about the threat of what a threat of having a cybersecurity attack. Would you say, based off your experience and what you're seeing, is that a fair reference?
It is. It's not just in the security space. the risk from AI. Is a problem for all businesses. Okay, so AI reduces the skill set and the skill level of your threat actor. In the past,
Yeah.
if we look at the, we call them APTs, right? Advanced Persistent Threat Groups. A lot of the APTs that have been pulling off these big heists and taking down large banks and Fortune 100 companies, some of them, right? Some of them come out of nation state security groups. The North Koreans are a good example. So you've got these, basically they're intelligence units that do hacking, and then they start robbing banks. All right. And this is relatable to the pirate and privateer problem of, centuries gone by. The same thing with the GRU in Russia, but it's a slightly more complex ecosystem of state-based tolerance of these groups. As long as they're not hacking any of the Russia or any of the surrounding Baltic states that speak Russian, or they're using the Cyrillic alphabet. As long as they don't do that, then they're tolerated and allowed to rip off the West, because they look over here to Australia and they think that we're rich and we're fat and they can just take our money and it's fine. Okay, this is how they think. But they had to work hard to have this level of skill that brought with a certain amount of discipline. With AI, in the same way that it enables, let's say, you to build a website without you needing the discipline to study HTML and CSS and these things.
It fast tracks the same thing.
Now, people just need the intent, and they can use an AI and they can start doing damage, whether that damage is scamming Australians on the phone out of their life savings, or, calling up grandma, cloning your voice and saying, "Grandma, I'm stuck in London. I've had my wallet taken. Please send me $1,000, right?" And it sounds like you. People fall for this stuff. This is deepfake technology. Only a few years ago, almost nobody had this capability. This is the kind of thing you'd see in a Mission Impossible movie. Now, any slightly tech-savvy street gang can do this. Okay, so that is a dangerous environment for businesses to be operating in. And businesses need to protect themselves right now, because despite the Australian investment on a strategic level into cybersecurity defense, businesses are operating well beyond the borders or the aegis of the government. They're on their own. And it's really not much different to, I don't know, the Silk Road, okay, where you've got this caravan carrying all these goods and bandits will come and take them off you. Similarly to the East Indian Company, when they were trading spices, right? And they became incredibly wealthy, but their wealth didn't come without an expense on security. And to pay for that security, they built the largest navy the world had ever seen. Okay. Now, your modern enterprise, your modern companies, they need to spend on security, or they're going to have problems because they're operating on the internet. Somebody in Russia, China, Iran, they can just reach out and touch their computers. Okay. So it's dangerous.
Do you see a lot of companies still reluctant to implement, or are still hesitant to have these type of discussions around their cybersecurity?
Cybersecurity is only one of many risks that your modern board of directors has to manage. And they need to think about what their business is. Are they making fried chicken? Maybe security is not so important. Do they hold the data on millions of Australians? Dates of birth, medical information, secret messages on dating apps. These are the things that can ruin lives. And there's laws around it too. So yes, depending on what business people are in, they need to think about security. Now, there are a lot of really good resources for small businesses and medium-sized enterprises, like the Essential 8. Now, the Essential 8 is an initiative from the ACSC. which is part of the Australian Signals Directorate. And it contains a set of, they're not simple. They sound simple at first, but they're not simple when you start to implement them. It's a series of strategies that, when implemented, will stop most cyber attacks. And it's relevant for your tiny, small business operator all the way through to your banks. However, at the banking end of things, there's more regulatory and governance requirements for security. You've got APRA CPS. But I won't go into that now, okay? Because you don't want to hear about cyber governance. But I have been involved in things like rapid cyber uplift of banks. I did some work with Beyond Bank. So it's one of the larger community banks. And they needed someone to sort of help with security operations. And I was, yeah, I did that. That was cool. But I've held a variety of different jobs and consulting. For much of my career, I was doing penetration testing, which is what we call professional hacking. Now, with that, it's not just testing, your web app to see how to hack it. It also included things like bypassing security systems, access control systems on doors, tailgating employees, finding open conference rooms, plugging in to network cables, underneath things like Cisco desk phones and so on. And this is a professional service that large companies in this country use regularly. But depending on who your audience is, they're not going to relate.
No, from a technical point of view, probably not. But was it the love of doing this that brought you into that space? Or was it just a skill that you, from a young age, that you knew you had and you just thought, I'm just going to follow that?
My advice for young people who are charting the course of their career is to go for jobs and roles that don't exist yet. And
How would they
a
do
lot of
that?
people in tech, they're probably going to tell you not to learn programming because the computer will write the programs for you. Well, I think you should still learn it because it's excellent exercise for your mind. It teaches you how to think logically. And if you can't, right now, if you don't know how to write a program, you're going to struggle to manage the programming from your AIs. What else? So no, I mean, I didn't plan this. I just thought hacking was cool when I was 12 because I saw the movie War Games and I was already programming from a young age. So I just, I went to the library and read every book on it and started, skipping school and going to university. I just did the stuff any kid does, really, right? And later at university, in my first few days, I walked into the office of the lecturer who was teaching the postgrad students, teaching computer security, and I asked him about it, and he really put me off. Said some things like, "Oh, the students teach me more than I teach them." And I thought, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
So at that time, penetration testing and that sort of security consultancy didn't exist. It wasn't part of the economy, which it is now. I fell into graphic design. I learned a lot about small business, digital printing, something I did with my brother that was hugely influential, I think, on my thinking and my skill set. I've fallen into crypto. I ended up being director of engineering for Coin Payments, the largest cryptocurrency payments provider in the world, with, I think they had like 1 million customers on the books, but only about 100,000 active ones across about 200 countries. So I didn't plan for that. It just kind of happened. And along the way, I learned a lot of skills.
Sounds like it. What's fascinating is what you mentioned before. You had the idea, which made sense to with Threat Canary based off what you saw. You mentioned at the start of this podcast that it's very important to follow any idea and go for it. And most people have an idea. But what was the difference from having the idea and making sure that you acted on it?
Oh, look, I've had ideas I've acted on before, right? There are processes you can use to evaluate your ideas. If you've got a dozen ideas and you don't know which one you should be doing, just one thing you can do is you can start mind mapping. All right.
Yeah.
And you can see how these ideas relate to the skill sets you have, to the things you want to do. Another thing you can do is you can build a table, and on that table, start building out columns of how big it can get. That might be the total addressable market, but you could just, decide if it's like $2 signs or if it's $5 signs, just like a restaurant price guide. Or you can evaluate how easy it's going to be. Is this thing really complex, or do you think it's quite manageable? And how much fun is it going to be? Because you have to enjoy the journey, not just the destination. If people could, wish for $1 million and then put their head down and work hard till they got it, everybody would do it. But people can't do that. That's not how humans work. You have to love the journey.
Mm. I think that's so important.
Yeah.
So important.
And there's other things you can think about, like, are you giving something back to society? How is it going to make you feel inside? Right?
Yeah.
Are you going to feel rich? Like you're just exploiting some market inefficiency? Or are you going to feel like you're making a difference and you're making people's lives better? So these are the
Mm.
questions people need to ask when they're evaluating their ideas.
Can I ask something about that? What you mentioned in terms of the questions there. So what I wanted to ask is that because there's a few fair questions there, and one you mentioned around falling in love with the process. Does that question have to be definitively a yes at the start, in your opinion, based off what they may not know may happen through that journey?
Well, you talked about the hero's journey, or if you look at the
Yeah.
tarot card set, there's a card called the Fool, and I think the idea is that he's a fool because he's starting out and he doesn't know what he's getting himself into. And
Okay.
Jungian psychology has something to say about that as well. But I think you need to be a little bit irrational,
Hmm.
and optimistic, because if you
Yes.
really knew how hard it would be, you wouldn't do it.
That's so true. It's like that. It's like with that. It's like the dream. I was listening to a podcast the other day around this guy was talking about the quantum leap. I don't know if you've heard too much about that. But he was saying basically it starts off at first having a dream or a goal that is so big it scares you, and that you at first you don't know how you're going to get there.
I don't know. Um, I think some people don't know how they're going to get there, but other people dream about things based on what they know. And if you're already an expert, you know how you're going to get there.
Mm. Would you say that that's because you said that with conviction? So I can. It sounds like that's where you are, and I guess that's where you see Threat Canary in terms of where you're going.
Well, I thought I did. I was kind of wrong because I had to learn a whole lot more about AI than I thought I'd need. But that's okay.
Okay. And talk us about that journey so far. Like you spoke from a technical aspect. Like, has there through the last 3 years been any self doubt? Has there been any challenges as the three the founders? Has there been challenges in that side of things? Because I think a lot of people would love to know that as well, especially when they're thinking about toying with the idea of giving an idea a good go. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Mm, yeah, 2 years, not 3 years, but out of those 2 years, I I spent all my money and my savings pursuing this until I ran out. And then I had to call up my friends and ask them, hey, can you get me some contract work? Um, and that's how I fell into doing the cyber uplift for a bank. And that was only
Oh
meant to be
yeah.
6 months, but it kept getting extended. And I liked the work too, but these things can kind of be a distraction from your goal. And it was for me. I mean, I enjoyed the experience and I learned things from it, but
Mm.
I have um, uh, basically ran myself down financially until I hit zero a couple of times. And then I had to go hustling for either angel investment or doing contract work again to keep going. And because I believe in this so much, I've said no to the relative safety and stability that I could have had otherwise.
Wow. That conviction to be able to do that on numerous of times, is that because you're so infatuated with the fact that this product and this service is going to make a difference? Or is it just because like there's the want that it's going to make a difference? Because I think that it's two different things, isn't it? From knowing to them also wanting. But from what I'm hearing, and I might have this wrong, deep down, and I'd love to hear where you think where you're going to go with it.
Mm-hmm. I think people know they can change the world, but the key word here is can. And another word is will. Okay. Will you do it just because you know you can? Some people do. Most people don't. They give up when it gets hard. So perseverance is really important. I once started this environmental charity called Letterboxer in New Zealand. I'm actually a Kiwi. And there were these environmental problems, and it was around 2006. Now I was looking at what environmental problems I thought might be solvable. And I was trying to keep it realistic. I looked at plastic bags, single-use plastic bags, and I looked at a few other things. I ended up settling on trying to target brochures. Do you remember back when the local mall would give you a thick set of brochures multiple times a week, and you just pull it out of your letterbox and you'd look at it and be like, oh yeah, shoes, Dick Smith Electronics, into the recycling bin, right? You'd look at it for seconds, if that. And I thought, okay, I want to target that. It's going to be easy. All right. All I have to do is go find some no junk mail stickers. So I, contacted the local council and they gave me a stack of these stickers. And then I started trying to get people to volunteer and go door to door with me. And we do a little survey. How much do you like junk mail? If they said they didn't like it, I'm like, well, here's a sticker. But I made them put it on their letterbox right then and there. I wouldn't just hand it over. Okay. Because each one of these stickers was a limited, expensive resource, right? It's not just a cheap sticker, it had to be UV resistant. It had to last. So that was cool. That worked. Then ended up talking one of my friends at a barbecue into sponsoring it. And, it was logo in the corner, and we had a competition with iPods, and some designer. Turned out the guy who won was actually a friend of mine, but whatever. He was a really talented designer. He deserved to win. And that was cool. And it was harder than I thought it would be, but I did make a difference, and that's still going today. So for your listeners in New Zealand, go to letterboxer.org.nz, and it's, and I've been in Australia for a long time now, originally in 2012, and, got my friend, Julian McKeefrey to run it for a bit. And then my other mate, Charlie Abrahams, is running it. And these guys are both cool too, in the sense that they're both startup guys. They're both guys who, create things and build companies. And they have incredible lives and adventures, just like probably most of your guests. So I think everybody, right, who has a plan to get rich should also have a plan to change the world and make it better.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I love that, because it's one of my big whys to become successful is to help homelessness. And because I think my personal belief in when it comes to homelessness, I think we're all either one bad decision or one unlucky break from being homeless. That's my personal belief, just because of the experience I've seen and so forth. Like there's luck that plays a part in where we are as well. So I think when you have and you know this as well. When you have a why that's bigger than you are, then you're going to be able to get through things that are going to be tougher than you are. And
How are
I
you
think that's, yeah.
solving, or how are you trying to alleviate the problems of homelessness?
I think so my aim is two aspects. I think it comes down to two things. One, it's mindset. It's helping people, give them the skills to be able to get work. So my background, Andrew, is been in sales for close to 15 years. And I think being able to effectively communicate is something that can be taught to anyone. So that's one aspect. Like, and I want to one day, just for a test, is get people off the street, give them the skills that I know over a period of time, and then get their interviews and so forth. That's one aspect.
Uh-huh.
Then the other is I want to build. I haven't spent much time thinking about this, but the dream was to have buy a hotel and use that hotel and use the rooms to be able to help people come in, get clean for a period of time, train them the skills, and then help them go back into the world. That's the pie in the sky, the big dream, because it's a personal reason. It's so personal is because my dad was an alcoholic growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad died in 2019 at the age of 54. And because of that, and there was a period of time that he was homeless. And he struggled to live in this reality and be able to be around other humans and so forth. And I think looking at that and seeing what he went through and spending time speaking to other people that I've seen on the street, you have people that are there that are unfortunate enough to have experience where they're there, but then they go into drugs and it starts to become a really bad place. Then you've got other people that have moved down to Melbourne from New Zealand or from Queensland. They've had a job, they've got into a car crash, and they've got no family around them. And so I just, yeah, and you can probably tell just the way I'm speaking about it's how I'm communicating it is just from the passion and the dream of being able to make a difference in that. And I think it starts from teaching something that I think is simple,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to help them understand. Because if you can communicate effectively, then it becomes very easy to be able to get quite a lot of the jobs. Similar to programming, if you can program effectively, I'm sure it's the same.
I can see what you're trying to do there, and take someone off the street, teach them how to speak and communicate, clean them up, and then push them into a pipeline where they can get a job of some sort, giving them the stability that they need to remake their lives. I think that's a noble
Yes.
effort, and you have you've got enough of a vision and a personal story that will mean that you'll actually work hard on this, rather than just say, oh, well, I've got this good idea, but whatever. It's just one of many.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. I think, yeah, it's interesting because hearing you talk about what you've built and so forth, and throughout the technical jargon, that a lot of it is hard to understand for someone like me. But what comes through, and every time you speak about it, is the passion and the conviction in it. And I think it's an interesting question that I'd love to ask you with that, with the conviction. How have you found being able to communicate that to new customers that maybe don't have the technical understanding?
Customers don't buy based on technical understanding.
What would you say they buy
Um,
on?
They've got, okay, so Threat Canary, right, is in development.
Okay.
So we have customers coming to us asking about it. Banks and
Okay.
other people saying that they want to use it, but it's in development, so they can't have it yet.
I see.
Some companies have had some benefits from it, for example, through bug bounty programs, using some of the features and doing feature validation. I have managed to get some bug bounties from Optus, and I specifically targeted them because they had the breach. And I thought, well, if it's an API related thing and it's in their bug bounty program, it's going to look good. So there's that
Mhm.
social validation. Same thing with ANZ. I picked them just because, right? They're a major bank. If I can find an issue and demonstrate it, again, it looks good. But generally, the sales and the go-to-market strategy, both here and then in the United States later, that hasn't been executed yet. So I can't really answer your question fully.
Okay. That's fair. Have you got an idea of when you're planning to execute it? Have you got, I guess, a date or in mind of when you want to go to market?
That depends on some things that are happening in the background right now that I really want to tell you about,
Mhm.
but I'm not going to.
The suspense around that. I thought you was going to go that way. Okay. And so, what's the vision for you?
And,
What's the vision for Threat Canary?
um,
Where do you want to take it?
well, it's a cyber AI platform, and it's not really just about stopping data breaches. That's just the first problem we want to solve because that's like a serious problem affecting companies right now. What it's really about is AI security. As we go into the future and the limits, right, on engineering power and skills are lifted and things get faster and the attackers are going to be using AI, so too do the defenders. And
Hmm.
it's really important that we keep up in this arms race. Otherwise, it's not just, the occasional company that's going to be toast and get breached and lose their money. It's going to affect our entire economy.
Right. And so then Threat Canary, you want to be the staple, the staple to be able to help, I guess, outfight that war that you're referring to.
Yeah. I mean, we're already in a cold cyber war, but it's only going to get a bit more sticky from here on out.
Yeah, I do agree. I think it's, and I think a lot of people will get distracted with AI, as we're seeing from the front end in terms of what it can do and so forth. But I think you've raised some really valid points around that. It's all well and good in terms of what AI can do at the front end, but it can do just as bad on the back end if it's in the hands of the wrong person.
There's a lot more to Threat Canary that I haven't really covered. Ideas about design and usability, giving actionable intelligence and capabilities to executives, automating jobs, lifting limits on skilled engineers in the same way that Henry Ford lifted the limits on engineers with the assembly line around 1912 was the first car. Then we've seen
Mhm.
a repetition of that with things like DevOps 100 years later, where you're bringing together different teams, making them work together with automation. So you lift that limit again.
Yes.
We have that with DevSecOps, where we're mixing security into the development pipelines. And again, we're now seeing that limit of skilled engineers and cyber analysts, penetration testers, blue team defenders, all of those limits are being lifted simultaneously as AI disrupts not just this sector of the economy, but all of them simultaneously.
Mm. It's going to be a very interesting period that we embark on as a generation in terms of this, because it's the technology wave has come in like a tsunami, and I think it's you either adapt, you either implement stuff, otherwise you're going to be left behind, not just from a competitive point of view, but also as we've discussed in a lot of detail, security point of view. It's like they go hand in hand, and it's been really insightful from my end as well, because I have been guilty of that. It's like it's because I've spoken to other businesses in cybersecurity recently, and it's you just don't know what you don't know, and I think it's the education around the industry or the security and what you need to do hasn't been there as much as it probably should and will be.
So there's this guy called Alvin Toffler, and he wrote a book called Future Shock, I think around the 60s, around the same time that Bucky Fullmeister was making geodesic domes. And it was all about changes in society with technology. The railway incredibly changed commerce. The ship, and particularly the clock on a ship, so you could figure out where you are on your longitude, changed the ability to have ocean journeys to get to other continents. Then later we had the telephone, then we have the internet, right? All of these things will reshape society and change things. Like the invention of the motor
Yes.
car changed the layout of our cities, and we're still trying to figure out how to adapt to that properly with things like walkable zones and the social aspects and urban planning. The internet changed commerce. It changed the ability to communicate. It's had massive effects, but the tsunami, like you say, of AI is going to be bigger than all of these.
Great. Agreed.
Yes.
Does that worry you?
No, I'm worried about other things.
Yeah. It's, do you know why? Because it's like I believe in AI from the front end. So we help a lot of businesses, for example, implement AI to help with their lead generation, for example, or their sales aspect. Because what I find with AI from my industry is that you're going to get a lot of people pass by from a sales point of view, because it's nowadays the general population doesn't like to be sold to. We all know from a general understanding at a standard level is we understand certain sales techniques, right? We understand if there's a special offer at the end of the month that they're trying to increase their stuff like that.
Yes.
And so we resist against that. We resist against the cold calling and how if someone asks, is this Andrew? It's Charlie. We automatically resist. And I think what that means is that from an effective communication point of view is that salespeople need to evolve very quickly. They need to adapt. They need to continue to build their skills, because people don't want to be sold to, and they have a very good level of understanding, because not only of the internet, but also ChatGPT and the other platforms to be able to get the knowledge so that they can make the best decision for themselves. So what people want now is connection. They want trust. And so I think it's going to be a very interesting period in marketing, sales, and so forth around how businesses are going to adapt and use AI as a tool to be able to connect with people quicker. And so I think it'd be interesting because you sort of tease with some of the things that you're also going to be building, and I can see. Yeah, I find I think you're seeing the landscape in a very interesting way, and I think you're starting to try to build stuff to are preempting the things that are going to happen at a very fast period, a fast period of time.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're going to build something that takes a while to build, you need to build it with future technology for today's problems. You need to be
Yeah.
a couple of steps ahead because by the time you get there, the world will have changed a little bit. And you're right about human connection and sales. People don't want some sales guy to ring them up and tell them about an opportunity, right, to solve a problem. They don't want that. They've already got the internet. They
No.
can just look it up. People want human connection and they want to trust. They want to trust
Yes.
influencers. Okay, so now we're in the age of the social media influencer. No longer is it the talking head
Mm,
on TV that is controlled by, a small number of executives running networks that shapes people's opinion. Oh,
yes.
it's the influencers. People like PewDiePie, who was a video game influencer. And YouTuber has recently started talking about Linux and why Linux on the desktop is such a good idea at a time when Microsoft is losing ground with decisions they've made and Windows 11 is no longer cool. Um,
Hmm.
it's causing huge shifts in people's, behavior. It's actually amazing because um, on the Linux thing, I didn't think that, Linux on the desktop would be something that the young people would be getting into, but they are. Um, And I think all of us are now scrolling on our phones in the evenings, right? Like
Yeah.
on Instagram and TikTok. I uninstalled TikTok. It was way too effective at figuring out what I was into.
Yeah. I see. I'm not on social media. But the only platform I'm on is YouTube, and that does it is very similar. Like it's very fascinating to see the younger generation in terms of how quick they're evolving, how quick they're implementing tech. And I agree, the influencers that are using those platforms, their reach is getting larger and stronger as we go along. And it's a fascinating period. It really is. I think it's but these conversations are needed more, I think. These conversations to understand that not just the front end, but the back end, because like I mentioned before, we don't know what we don't know. And if we don't invest the time to understand or try to get the basic knowledge, then we, we're going to be a victim of this tsunami.
Mm, absolutely. Yes. Um, we're seeing it already in the IT sector with developers being laid off in droves. ANZ
Yeah.
Bank is currently cutting huge amounts of their IT workforce. We've already seen similar things in Silicon Valley. Um, it's a hard time for people who are merely smart. And just because they're smart, they went to university, they did all the things society expected of them, they thought they could have an easy
Correct.
life with a six-figure salary. Well, those days are over.
Yeah.
Which is the middle managerial and um, technical classes that are going to suffer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree. And I think that's where the upskilling is so important, not just from a technical point of view, but you even see the people that come out of uni that have the skills, they can do the jobs, but they can't communicate the value that they bring.
I don't know, man. I actually fundamentally disagree with that thesis.
Really?
Yeah, I think universities have been co-opted by forces that have turned them into degree mills, and our graduates are largely useless for industry.
Because they're not getting real life education.
Because what they're being taught is not useful to the real world.
I think we could spend the next hour to 2 hours going down that rabbit hole on. I agree because I think the schooling system is still back in the 1940s, but it's still exactly the same because it was built. The whole thesis behind it was to and get people in the schooling system so that they can produce more factory workers. It hasn't changed since.
When I went to school in the 80s, we still had the bell that would tell us when to react and do this and do that, and straight out of the factory,
Yeah,
right? You can see the how that all came to be. It's a little different.
it's crazy. It really is. But Andrew, I do want to ask the 3 questions that we ask every single person, because as you can see, the conversation could evolve even further, and I'm mindful of your time. So
Yes.
the 3 questions are, sorry, were you going to ask
Before
them?
we get to the end, I want to tell you about my side project.
Yes, skip that AI.
So we've talked about, Threat Canary, and this is my life's ambition. This is what I'm really trying to do to change the world. But skipthat.ai is, by contrast, it's much smaller, but it's using some of the same skills and technologies and techniques that I've been applying to Threat Canary. So by comparison, Threat Canary is an aircraft carrier. This skipthat is just a dinghy, but it's still effective and can change the world. Now, I think we all listen to popular music, right?
Mhm.
And we listen to the lyrics, but we don't really listen to the lyrics, do we? No. And when you listen to the melody of a song, it might be a happy melody, you're feeling good, but your brain is processing the melody and the lyrics along completely separate neural pathways. So you
Okay.
think that you understand your experience, but you may not, because when you're listening to these lyrics and you're not really processing them consciously, they're going straight into your mind. They can have an effect on your mood. They can have an effect
Yes.
on young people's identity formation during formative years. They
Mhm.
can have an effect on children, not just the obvious. I was in a park the other day and some kids started laughing about, I love big butts and I cannot lie. And I thought it was really cringe, bad parenting. That's one aspect. Then there's another aspect where they're listening to gangster rap, they're getting ideas about how to be an adult, how to interact with, women,
Yeah, they
money,
normalize it, don't
substances.
they?
It can normalize a lot of really negative behaviors and help these, push people in the wrong direction, not just for themselves personally, but for all of society. So music lyrics are not just art, they have an effect on people's minds. So I was playing around with this idea and also thinking about cognitive influence operations and psychological warfare. And because, of course, we've got the whole security side thing as well. Anyway, by applying it to music lyrics and borrowing from cognitive behavioral therapy in particular, I was able to do a couple of things. One, I could take the lyrics, use a large language model to analyze it. And with that, I can identify things like substance abuse. I didn't need like a keyword filter, okay? Because there's thousands of words that can mean things. How many different words mean cannabis,
Correct.
right? And then CBT was really good when it comes to identifying things that are harder to figure out, like cognitive distortions. So the cognitive behavioral therapy framework, which is really popular in psychology at the moment, has a set of cognitive distortions, and it also has instructions on how to measure them. So I programmed the AI to recognize these for the songs. So even if the song doesn't have swearing, it doesn't have substance abuse, graphic violence, I can still measure when it's bad for your brain or for your children's brains. Furthermore, I've got some friends who, one of my mates, James, right? He's telling me about how he's in the gym and, he's a good Christian. And Doja Cat, this pop star, right, really popular at the moment, comes on and she's singing about painting the town red and being a devil and selling her soul for fame and fortune, right? It just brings him down. He doesn't want to listen to that. Okay. So
Mhm.
by analyzing the lyrics, I can automatically skip that. I can skip that song if you know ahead of time you don't want to listen to it. But everybody's different, right? Some people have a greater tolerance for songs that reference, alcohol or swearing or whatever, and you have different environments. Your 5-year-old's birthday party is different from you and the mates hanging out on Saturday night drinking beers, right? So you've got a series of different sliders implemented that you can move them up and down as you want. And there's a series of different frameworks, each with different metrics. So you can choose what suits you and what you want to listen
Right.
to.
And then you plug that, and then so
It connects to Spotify. It's only Spotify at the moment. People have said they
and
want to.
how would that? So can I ask a question on that? So I connect that to Spotify,
Yeah.
and let's say I like a song,
Mhm.
but I don't like some of the words that are saying.
Mm-hmm.
Will it skip the song altogether, or will it buffer? Like, will it still play the song, but get rid of those words?
Well, at the
I'm tr-
moment, and it's relatively simple, okay, in the sense that it does one thing. It measures the lyrics against this framework. And then for each of these different metrics, one of them is going to be the age rating where you've got your swearing, another's going to be cognitive distortions. If it exceeds it on that metric, then it skips it. Or it just logs it and shows you. You can choose. That's all it does.
Interesting.
Okay. And yes, technically I could do things like download the song, take out just that one word, but that gets into a different space with intellectual property.
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
those are uncharted waters.
But I see that being really good from especially from a parenting point of view. When your kids start wanting to get into music and they get Spotify on their phone, being able to implement it as a parent, I can see that giving a lot of parents peace of mind.
Yeah, your children are really vulnerable to the media you expose them to. And the
Oh,
stories
for
that you
sure.
tell at home and at school
Yeah,
and on the TV and in society, they shape who your children turn into. So this is designed with that in mind.
I love that. I love that because I yeah, that like I said, we could, and it'd be definitely worth having a conversation offline because I think there's a lot of similar values, beliefs around the current society and what it's trying to do from an influential point of view,
Mhm.
and so forth. But yeah, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole on
Look,
this platform.
it's up to us, the entrepreneurs and the business leaders and the leaders in technology to reshape the world and make it better because no one else is going to do it.
I agree, and it start. But do you know what's interesting around that as well is that it starts with internally to then be able to do it externally. Do you know what I mean? And I think that once you start to control the external influence in the internal, you're then able to have a bigger impact on the wider range externally.
Was it Marcus Aurelius who said, first you conquer yourself, then you conquer the world?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the toughest battle that you will ever face, regardless if you start a business or not.
Hmm.
And I think that segues nicely onto these questions, Andrew.
Okay, let's get it.
That the first one is, what does success mean to you?
I don't know. I don't think there's any end point for success. I'm never going to get to the finish line and say, yeah, I did it.
I like that. I like that. Has that so based on that?
Mhm.
What the second question is? What advice would you give an 18-year-old Andrew around how to view success based off what you've just said?
Okay. You're 18. You're leaving school.
No,
You're
you're
thinking,
18.
I'm 18.
Yeah, so it's giving your advice, not to me as an 18-year-old, the 18-year-old yourself.
Oh, don't go to university in your own city. Go find who you want to learn from anywhere in the world based on what they've done,
Okay.
what textbooks they've written, the courses, and just try to go there. Because if
Mm,
if you stay in your own little bubble with your own friends and stuff, I mean, that's kind of cool, right? But the people who I've seen who have traveled to learn, they've done better.
I agree. Yeah. You learn from your experience quicker,
Yeah.
don't
Oh,
you?
oh yeah.
Because of the pain.
Also buy Bitcoin when it comes out.
Ah, yeah. 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 Do you know what I mean? That's yeah, I'd agree with that one. Jeez. And last but not least, Andrew, is success simple?
I mean, sometimes success just means showing up and sticking at it. Sometimes it's really
Yeah.
simple.
Mm.
I think it's up to you
Love
how
it.
complex it is and how complex a challenge you want to take on.
Mm. I love that. Like it's one of the reasons, one of the main reasons we started this is I believe I look at the younger generation and the how social media is influencing how they see success and how they view the world and so forth. And I hope people see this as an opportunity, as a reminder, and as a reminder to allow them to understand that success it is different. It's a personal opinion, and and I think it's about helping people understand what that is to them, so that they can then go and be that.
Yeah. Um, I think I hope people listen to your podcast and they get inspired. That'd be cool.
Yeah, me too. Thank you. I really appreciate that, Andrew. I appreciate your time. Like it's flown. You know what I mean? It's absolutely flown by. But honestly, it's been a pleasure. I think what you're doing is having such a positive impact commercially, but also personally as well. And I love the determination and drive that you show. I think it's a wonderful trait to have, and I think there's so many people that would be listening to this that, from a technical point of view, maybe won't understand anything, but I think what they will get out of it is the grit and determination to succeed is there, and I hope I can be some part of that journey from maybe a professional, personal point of view.
I hope so too. Thank you, Charlie. Much appreciated. And thanks for inviting me on your podcast.
You're welcome, Andrew. Thank you once again. Have a lovely evening, and yeah, I will connect with you on LinkedIn, and let's have a conversation offline at some point to yeah, understand more around if there's any synergy to help either one on their journey in terms of making the impact that we both want to.
Let's have a phone call after this recording.
Yeah,
All right. Thanks.
awesome. Sounds good. Speak to you in a minute. Thanks.